Hillary here with WaterLogged, and today I want to talk to you about things that you can do when it comes to picking out a new fish for your tank. Now this video is going to be a two-part video, so in the first part of the video we're going to talk about different things that you, the hobbyist, the individual, the consumer, can look for in the fish specifically, and in part two, the next video, we're going to talk about some of the questions that you should be asking at your local fish store before you ever purchase and take a fish home. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, before you buy any fish or coral or invertebrate to take home to your tank, the number one thing that I always recommend to people is to do your research. You want to make sure if you've already got a tank or if you are purchasing a tank that whatever species of fish you are interested in adding to that, you want to make sure that you're going to have the right size aquarium to put them in, that you're not going to get a tank that is too small that the fish will outgrow. So do your research about the type of fish and what its requirements are before you ever go to your local fish store. Now, the first category of things that I want to talk to you about when it comes to purchasing a fish is their physical health. Now, if you're not super familiar, if you've not kept this fish before, there's several different things that you should look for when you're buying a fish. Now, first off, you want to look and see if the fish's body has any sort of film over top of it. That could be a sign of stress. It could be their stress coat. It could be a bunch of other things. So you want to make sure that they're not stressed or they're not looking slimy. Another thing you want to look for is different sort of spots. Now these can be a lot of, not in the color pattern, but on their physical body. So you look at it, fish from different angles, you should be able to see if there's any raised spots along the fish's body. That's a sign that maybe you should steer clear of that fish. Now another thing you can look for is their gills. A lot of times they're covered by the operculum, so you probably won't see them, but if you do see them, generally that's going to be a sign that something's wrong, and again, steer clear of that fish. Something else is redness, right? So a fish is going to have its typical body colors and patterns, and if they're stressed or they're feeling out of sorts, those colors might be a little bit darker or a little bit paler depending on how they're feeling, but redness is something that typically sticks out and is very obvious to see. Along with redness, sometimes you probably would see ulcers or bruising. So if the fish has any patches on its body, like circular patches that look kind of almost red or bloody and it might look bruised on the outside, that's a sign that the fish is not healthy and you should steer clear of it. Another thing that you should look for is check out their scales. Make sure that all of their scales are intact, their scales aren't missing, they don't have patches of scales that are gone. So that's something that you should look for. Along the similar lines is look at its fins and look at its tail. You want to make sure that there's no signs of fin or tail rot, and also you want to make sure that that fin and tail is all still intact. If it's not, it could be a sign of fin rot. It could be that it's been picked on by other fish, and it may grow back. It might not be something too serious, but it's definitely something to make sure that you're making note of. Now, something else that you can look for is check out its eyes. So make sure to look at it from head on. So you're going to want to see, one, are its eyes the same size? You want to make sure that one eye isn't bulging and sticking out. You're also going to want to make sure that its eyes aren't cloudy or covered. Typically cloudy eyes, if you haven't seen it before, it's very obvious, it sticks out. You can't see the coloration in the fish's eyes. So that's a sign that something is wrong. Now, the last thing on this list that you should look for is a pinched stomach, or even pinching that's directly behind the eyes up on the top of the head. Those could be a sign of malnutrition or even parasites, so you're going to want to take a look at that. It could just be that the fish hasn't eaten in a while, but it's things that for me throw up a red flag that might put me on pause from buying that fish. Now, the next category of stuff that you can look for when it comes to purchasing a new fish is behavioral issues. Now again, each fish behaves a little bit differently, and if you're not familiar with that fish, it might seem tricky. However, a lot of times, especially at local fish stores, there's going to be more than one of an individual species in a tank. So when you're looking into those tanks, you want to check and see if the fish is swimming correctly, if it's able to hold its position in the water column, it's not listing to one side or the other, its head's not up or its tail's not up, because those are all different signs of issues. So make sure that it's swimming properly in the water. You also want to check and make sure that it's not gasping rapidly at the surface or breathing super heavily. Sometimes in aquariums, a fish could be chased around, it could be stressed out, and those might be reasons for it to be gasping for air or breathing heavily, but check on it a couple of different times. It shouldn't be having those issues. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, it shouldn't be lethargic and lazy laying down on the bottom. There are certain types of fish, when you see them in local fish stores, harlequin tusk and pufferfish are two that come to mind. A lot of times if you see them, they're stressed, they'll hide in the back of the corner, they'll be laying on the ground, but especially during feeding time, those fish should be active and coming out after the food. Now, two other things that you can look for is bullying behavior or chasing behavior. Now, this could go both ways. So if a fish is being bullied and it's being chased around, just go ahead and assume that it's probably under a good deal of stress from that bullying and that chasing around, and that you might experience some issues related to that stress a little bit later on. Now, on the flip side of that coin, if you see a fish that is doing the chasing and is bullying other fish, that could mean that even if you get them out of that tank and you bring them home, it could be a troublemaker. So if you have a tank full of peaceful fish, that fish that's bullying the others might be one that you should steer clear from and avoid bringing home. So those are a couple of different things. Make sure you come and tune in for part 2, different questions that you should be asking at your local fish store before you purchase a fish. Now, I'm curious, leave a comment below. Let me know if there are any other signs or things that you look for when it comes to buying a fish and what your fish buying experience has been in the past. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.